my mom says I'm the most cheerful, furious person she's ever met, and it is about rape. So I want to let everybody know that ahead of time. It is about recovery after rape, and there's a very cathartic sing-along at the end. But if that is something that you are not comfortable with for whatever reason, I know it's been a very rough week, month, year and a half. So if you need to leave, your safety and your comfort is so much more than this show, so much more important. So please go ahead and do that. Great. So I'm going to set up, and if you need to move, please do. Thanks.
We're really good at that. Mazel tov! Oh wait. It almost weird how like a big yeah, it's a whale is
I've been raped twice, which is bullshit. The first time was on a transatlantic flight. We were flirting. I think it was fun, right up until it wasn't, right up until he sexually assaulted me. And it didn't occur to me that I could leave. It didn't occur to me that I was anything other than trapped, that I could have asked for another seat. It didn't occur to me that standing up, making him move from his aisle seat and letting me go would have been anything other than rude. And I didn't want to be rude. So instead I was raped. The second time was a betrayal. The second time, which is also bullshit. I was living in London at the time. I had moved there for grad school and stayed a couple of years after to work. I got involved with pervasive games, which is a sort of precursor to today's puzzle rooms, but with more immersive theater and more community. And it was magnificent and awesome and delightful. And 4 months after I discovered the concept, I was running the private games branch of a small company. I designed and ran games for 30th birthday parties and bachelor parties and corporate team building and museums and festivals. And I was really good at it. The owner of the company and I became very good friends. And when it became clear that I was going to have to leave the country, we tried to restructure the company in a way that would allow me to stay in the country. It didn't work. But sometimes I shudder at the thought of my legal status being tied to that man. In many ways, I was so lucky. I am wary of the word rape, even as I wield it frequently. It is strong and fierce and painful and a massive sledgehammer of a word, and I don't feel like my experience counts. It could have been so much worse. It was only twice. I was never punched or injured or abused. And then there's the fact that if I use that word, if I use that fierce, painful, massive sledgehammer of a word, well, what does that say about me? What does it mean to be a victim? A rape victim. Okay, fine, a rape survivor. What does that mean? I have PTSD. It is much better than it used to be, thanks to a lot of targeted, specific therapy. I am grateful that I no longer have nightmares. I am grateful that I no longer have physical memories where I can feel his hands inside my vagina. I'm grateful. Did I mention that he raped me right after my birthday? 2 months before I was getting kicked out of the country that I loved? It could have been worse, but that still sucked. I never liked birthdays beforehand. Too many expectations about how to feel. And I don't remember exactly what day I got raped. A fact that means that the entire month is a minefield of triggers. My birthday is a trigger. The first year after, I wanted to hurt. I didn't want to hurt myself, but I wanted to ache in a way that reminded me that I have a body, that I live in my body, that my body is mine. So I rented a bike and I biked up to Bothell. I rented a kayak and I got sunburned in the Arboretum. I drove to Discovery Park and I hiked down to the shore and I watched the sunset. And then I got lost in the dark trying to find my car. It didn't stop the anniversary from happening, but it helped. Aching and exhausted, it helped. This summer, I went back to London. My dear friend who had first introduced me to pervasive gaming got married, and I was a bridesmaid. And it was magnificent and delightful, and my stomach clenched when I rode the overground past the stop where I was raped. I started hyperventilating in the park where the company held most of our games. 6 years later, and that huge city was full of triggers. I was braced for the entire trip for the possibility that I might see him. And I haven't. I've been back about 5 times since I got kicked out, 2 months after I was raped. But I know he's still there. I know I could see him. And I don't know how I'll react. I have some thoughts, some scenarios I've run through in my head. 1, I might start giggling uncontrollably. 2, I might punch him. 3, I might speak calmly to him and tell him that he stole a year of my life and also my birthday. 4, I might start shouting that he is a rapist whilst I'm on the train. I assume I will see him on the train. 5, I might blanch and freeze. 6, I might go up to him and say, with steel in my spine, "You absolute fucker," and then slap him. I'd like to slap him.
I drank too much, and in my effusiveness, confused him.
Oh, sweetheart, that's not what happened. I went over to his house for a last hurrah strategy and planning meeting. He just moved to a new flat, and this was the 3rd or 4th time I'd been over there. He'd found temporary cling film-like whiteboards and stuck them up all over the flat with different topics, like things to do in London and self-improvement. I ended up with my own sheet I stuck on the door, and we made an agenda of things to talk about on it, because we're both geeky like that. I'd taken off my combat/hiking boots when I got there, and he poured me the first glass of white wine when I arrived. And we started making dinner using his new food processor that he was so proud of. I made fun of him for how many robots he had in the house. When dinner was made, we both sat at his glass dining table and continued chattering away, drawing and illustrating our points on the table with dry erase markers. We talked about our company and the people in it and our ambitions. We talked about his girlfriend and his ex-wife. He told me I knew more of his secrets than anyone else. We talked about how furious his girlfriend was when he'd recently made out with his ex-wife. How she said she would leave him if he cheated again. How he had massively screwed up twice in his life. One, when he hit his ex-wife, and two, when he cheated on his girlfriend. And how he didn't want to ever screw up that bad again. We had tally marks on the table inside hearts, and whenever one of us said something that was a particularly us thing to say, the other would reach over and mark it. We were throwing around the sentence, "I love you," like it was candy. We kept drinking. 2.5 bottles in, we ran out of wine, so we walked to the off license and bought another bottle. I don't totally remember, but that might have happened twice. I told him about my most recent breakup and the fellow I dated who worked at our company. We talked about sex. We kept drinking. I felt happy and valued and excited and drunk. I said I needed to stay since I was too drunk. So I wobbled over to the couch, pulled the cushions off, and made them into a sleeping pallet. He said he only had one blanket, but that he'd build a cushion wall between us. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up. There's a pause here, but I didn't leave. I just stared at the page. I turned the corner out of the bathroom and collapsed, fully clothed but for my boots, into his bed. I fell asleep, I think. I became aware of his hand, groping my left breast through my sister's high school volleyball sweatshirt I was wearing. I was too drunk and sleepy to deal with a conversation about it, so I thought plausible deniability and seriously, and hoped he'd stop. I don't remember a whole lot here, the order of events, or how long any of this took. I know he got my jeans unbuttoned. I know he broke my butt a lot, which normally I like. I remember thinking, God, he's inept. I curled myself into a ball, hoping he would stop. His hand went down the front of my pants. I don't remember if he penetrated me from that side or not. I remember wondering why I wasn't crying. By this point, I was frozen. There's a pause here. I did leave. I went and got a drink of water. I was curled up as small as I could. I don't remember when I curled up. I was still wearing all of my clothes. I remember thinking, there isn't a safe side. I never faced him. Our faces never faced each other. His hand went down the back of my jeans and into me. I don't remember if he was on top of me or not. He must have been, because I remember realizing how much bigger than him I was. I don't remember if he got his penis out or not. Do I have to write about how his hand felt inside of me? That's the part I still get physical memories about. He claimed he didn't go in from behind when he was questioned by the police, but that was one of the few things I'm certain of. I finally said stop, several times trying to get louder. His hand moved out of me and onto my breasts. I said stop again, and finally had enough adrenaline or had sobered up enough or whatever that I left. I put on my boots, scrawled "not fucking cool," added a massive downward spike to our graph of how much fun we were having versus how much wine had been consumed, and I stomped back home through East London at 5 a.m. I remember welcoming how cold it was and feeling safe because no one would mess with me when I felt this ferocious. My college boyfriend, who lives in New York, was online when I got home. I told him about it, and his girlfriend got online when I just couldn't talk to a guy anymore. He told me I would hate men for a while, and I told him he was ridiculous. In the morning, I passed my flatmate a note and burrowed under her comforter. I called my friend Josh and told him I was going to ruin his day. He met me at the train station and stayed with me for 2 hours while I sobbed. He passed me to my friend Holly, who passed me to my friend Meredith, who passed me back to my flatmate, and I got through the first day. My mom asked me if I had a drinking problem. I have not forgiven her. It took me a month to look for counseling, and when I went, they handed me off to a legal advisor. I kept looking up definitions of consent and sexual assault. It was important to me to use the correct terms and to make sure that I deserved to use them. I worried about him, about whether I had led him on. Holly finally pointed out that I had dissented through my body language. I wanted to believe her, but didn't really. His girlfriend forgave him, said it sounded like any number of bad sexual experiences she'd had. I told him on IM that I considered it sexual assault, and he wrote back, "Oh God, oh God." I made him tell his girlfriend. I don't know what he said. He wrote me a letter/collage/map. It was ridiculous and had two endings. One where we became friends again, and two that led to an empty park bench. Of the 14 stops/stories on this collage/map, I showed up as a character in one, the 9th of 14. The legal advisor was great. The policewoman, not so much. She clearly didn't care about what I thought were important parts of the story. She said that only when he groped me after I said stop could be considered sexual assault, and that they could invite him in to give a statement, but that was all. 3 days later, he was arrested. I still don't know how that happened. Josh asked me if I really wanted my friend to face jail. He was already on a suspended sentence anyway from hitting his wife the year before. I was still thinking of him as my very good friend. The policewoman came to my house with papers for me to sign to drop the case. I felt pressured. I was leaving anyway. I barely believed I'd been assaulted. Why would anyone else? Consent seemed so very tricky. I sobbed uncontrollably. I moved to Seattle.
I'm not a turtle. I didn't have a shield to fend him off with. Humans don't have a safe side.
Yeah, we don't. The week after my 27th birthday, I was raped by a man I considered a good friend. This isn't about that experience. It's about cognitive perceptual therapy, or CPT, a structured and data-driven model of therapy that focuses on one specific experience. Every person and every experience requires a different approach, but I found CPT helpful as I struggled to make sense of what had happened and how I was reacting. My introductory CPT session was designed to make sure that my experience required this type of therapy, and to make sure I was willing to go through the process. I filled out a questionnaire that asked me to rate the frequency of experiences like nightmares, intrusive thoughts, and physical flashbacks. Rarely for 1 point, often for 2, or always for 3. At the end of the questionnaire, the answers added up to a number indicating how I was doing that day. At the first session, my total was 17. My therapist told me that therapy was indicated at 16. She was lying. Therapy was indicated at 18, but I was curled up in a ball, sobbing, sitting on the floor because the chair and the low bookshelf left me feeling too exposed and I needed higher walls. My therapist used her judgment to fudge my self-reported data and get me into the therapy I clearly needed. In retrospect, I think that first day I was probably around a 25. Therapy was highly structured. After that first session, I was told not to talk about the rape directly until we'd gone through 3 sessions to learn specific skills. I chafed at this restriction. It had been nearly a year since the rape, and I was frustrated about the learning curve. I had gotten myself to help. Let me talk about the rape already. But I had to learn first. The first skill I had to acquire in therapy was learning how to identify stuck points. My handouts define stuck points as conflicting beliefs or strong negative beliefs that create unpleasant emotions and problematic or unhealthy behavior. They're circular ideas that keep popping up and need to be dulled or exercised. Stuck points aren't behaviors or feelings or facts or questions. They're thoughts about yourself and your understanding of why the trauma happened. I often started mine with because. My stuck thoughts included, because I didn't say no, this is my fault. And because I spoke up, this isn't a big deal. Fundamentally, the thought I couldn't get away from was, my rape doesn't count. Today, it is hard to remember that anguish is what I kept feeling. Devastation and loss and loneliness. When the time came to actually talk about the rape, I was tasked with writing an account full of as many sensory details as I could include. Anytime I needed to stop writing because it was too hard, I was to draw a line on the page and keep writing again as soon as I could handle it. Then I had to read it aloud to myself every day. My account was 6 pages long. I stopped writing twice. I hated reading it aloud, but I diligently did my homework because already the physical memories were less frequent, and I trusted the process. My nightmares were decreasing, and I was hesitantly, ever so hesitantly, starting to be able to use the word rape. I flip-flopped between feeling proud and frightened of the word. I was strengthened by the feeling of ownership of such a powerful word and scared that it would be taken away from me, that I didn't deserve something so strong and aggressive and undeniable. At the first session, my therapist said that the goal was to have my questionnaire score. By the 8th week or so, I was consistently around a 7. I was proud of what I had learned and was struggling to complete my homework because lots of it, frankly, didn't apply to me. I got smug. Clearly, I was so great at therapy that I was basically totally cured and emotionally dealing with my brain. Look at how freely I used that word, and it would remain a somewhat troubling memory, but one that was firmly in the past. No more flashbacks, no more immediacy. The week before therapy was supposed to end, I had a massive relapse. An experience with a pushy man who wanted to date me, but whom I was uninterested in, led to a week of very difficult days. Actively using all of my new tools to untie the knots that my brain had tied. I did the best I could to take care of myself, but I wasn't very graceful about it. I'll do better next time. I'm glad I had the relapse while I was still in therapy. It was terrifying to realize that I could be triggered back to overwhelming feelings, and being able to work through that in a stable, familiar environment was invaluable. I know that I will probably have relapses in the future, sinking into deep-seated, stuck thoughts that I haven't yet been able to budge. But I have the tools now. I have a process. I have worksheets. The first day I walked into therapy, I broke down, so grateful to finally be hopeful that I would be able to get help, because I couldn't do it on my own any longer. And now I feel like I can face whatever I might need to.
My mom says I'm the most cheerful, furious person she's ever met.
Oh, there's more. Sing-along. Don't forget the sing-along. songs when I have something I need to work through. So when I'm frustrated or confused or angry, and I feel very vulnerable about sharing them. So thanks for being here. This September, 6 years after the fact, I finally wrote a song about him. To him. I wrote a song to him. The lyrics are very simple and repetitive. And I would love for you to sing along. Don't worry if you don't get the tune. Whatever you sing, it's just harmony. I'm gonna cycle through it 3 times, and no pressure, you really don't have to join me. But how cool would it be if you did? Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Fuck you,